In a shifting media landscape, media companies need to be at the forefront of innovation in order to keep up with consumers. Abroad, the sector has come to the party with investors keen to join in. But save for a few, South African companies are struggling to do the same. Joining us now in studio to discuss some lessons that investors in the sector can learn from is Finweek editor Jana Marais. Good to have you with us today, Jana. If we take a look at media companies, though, in South Africa, are we adapting and changing to the landscape?
Look, I think we've seen a lot of retrenchments in the sector over the past few years, and I think it's still very much tough times. You know, from a print media perspective, if you look at television, the SABC recently came out with their results. They've taken a massive knock. And then we've seen players like Altec, you know, cancelling their Altec node, TMG saying they're going to close down VD. So in the video on demand space, clearly we're not getting what consumers want out there just yet. So I think it's tough times. From an investor perspective, there's really two options for you on the JSE, and that's Naspers or Caxton. And I was actually quite surprised to see Caxton share price up 22% over the past year. If you think that they're very much still a print media play.
Yeah.
Naspers, I think, is a bit of a different beast, and I must say Finweek is owned by Naspers, so just to put that disclaimer there. And it's really not been the local, you know, Media 24 assets, so to speak, that's been driving Naspers. It's really the international assets, e-commerce, digital businesses. So I think Naspers has done quite well, you know, if you're looking, but then it's a very expensive share if you're an investor.
Exactly. High PE as well as the share price itself,
Yes.
Close to 2,000. But for a media company to remain successful, what are the key attributes that it needs to have?
Look, I think the key things that's going to be needed is you need to be able to offer a product that's really innovative and that consumers want. And I think the big challenge is to get people to pay for content, because there's so much out there that's free. And then, I mean, internationally, there are companies that's getting this very much right. You know, Netflix is one example. I think if you look at a company like the New York Times, for example, I think they've just breached their millionth subscriber online.
Sure.
People paying to read news online, which I think we're quite far behind on that scene.
Would that model work, though, in South Africa? I know it's been tried as well, but
look, it's an interesting space, and I think, you know, also in the Media 24 company, we've got Netwerk 24, which is an Afrikaans online platform where you pay a minimal amount to get Afrikaans news. But the reason I think they're successful, they've been growing those numbers quite a bit, is because Afrikaans content is quite limited. You know, they have a monopoly on Afrikaans news, so you can actually force your subscribers to pay for it. Whether it's going to work more broadly in the news business, I think, will be difficult. But then, I mean, the other thing I think is very much mobile. You have to be able to provide content on a mobile platform, and interestingly, video is the other thing that people say are going to take off massively. So you have to have video content.
So those are major trends to look out for in the future, mobile and video. And like you said, does have a significant play on the costs. But coming back to consolidation, could we see further moves to consolidate the industry? Because it seems as though smaller independent media houses are no longer that sustainable.
Look, I think it's really going to be if you can get a niche right and you can give your consumers what they want, there's probably room for you to make money out of it. And if you're making money in this business, the big guys are going to be looking at you, I think, personally. So it will be interesting to see how it all plays out. But yeah, I think it's a tough industry to invest in. And even the pay TV, I think the television has been getting a lot of attention recently, and it's going to be an interesting space to see, given the failures we've seen in the last year with video on demand services, who's brave enough to try and get into that space again in future.
New innovation, new skills, and that probably brings us to employees as well, just to add to the conversation. You mentioned retrenchments, and I think looking into the camera and asking questions might not be sustainable for me in the long term. We really need to multi-skill ourselves to write online videos, like you said.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least you're in the video business.
Exactly.
Help.
Let's hope so, Jana. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks.
That was Jana Marais, who is the Finweek editor.